Hey nerds, I recently had a conversation with a friend where he basically told me, how can I keep up with the latest things in software engineer if my employer won't give me enough time to learn during the job? And that really got me thinking, and also a little bit worried because does it mean that he's not owning his own career? And so, like the conversation stretched a little bit, and I shared all my experience and advice with him. I thought, he may not only be the only person having this concern. So I decided to record exactly what I told him, and this is what I'm gonna share today in this video. I'm gonna share exactly the kind of thinking that got me to where I am today in my career of software engineer and currently being a developer advocate. And I'm also gonna share some tips and tricks of the things that I do that help me keep up with the latest things and trends. As software engineers, we do need to own our own careers. I guess in every industry you need to do it, but especially in software engineer because things move on so fast and they change so fast that it is extremely hard to keep up if we don't put dedicated effort in order to do so. Just remember that what you learn today is going to be the foundation for your growth a few years from now. So make sure that you put the effort to learn new things. Also, when I talk about learning, I don't mean exactly Googling on how to resolve a specific problem or following a specific tutorial because you got stuck with something and that's what you want to do. But what I mean by learning is not something that is happening right now or trying to solve a problem that is happening right now. But what I mean by learning is learning new things, patterns, programming language, anything that you may need or perhaps not in the future, because that will broaden the knowledge and experience that you have, and it's going to expose you to new things, and it's going to change the way you think and the way you tackle future problems. So learning is about thinking ahead for the things that we foresee in the future that we may have to work with. Now, this is where I share some differences between the position my friend is in and the position that I was in when I was starting. Because when I was starting, I was working for a corporation that had nothing to do with software engineering. In fact, I was working in a department that was accounting. I was working as a software engineer. I was working as a developer, but my manager was an accountant, and all my colleagues had nothing to do with computers. Now, I was in this situation, which is a very particular situation for different reasons. We are not gonna dive into those today. But because I was in this particular situation, somehow I wasn't spoiled by big tech. So I had to find my own ways to learn, and often, and if not ever, happen completely outside the job. I'm someone who loves tech, and I'm someone who is always doing it just because of the passion of it and just because I love to do it. I love to hack, I love to build new things. And so I was constantly learning new things. I will go home after work and I was keeping on coding, and I will install Linux distributions, and I will do everything by hand just to get a grasp of how things work, because I love to know how things work. This is the difference with the experience that my friend has, because my friend went to a bootcamp and he's not particularly interested in software engineer, but he likes software engineer because he makes a decent living out of it. So he went to a bootcamp, he did the bare minimum, he got a job as a software engineer, as a web developer, and he's been doing that so ever since, working with React, learning a few things here and there, but somehow the experience or the exposure he gets to things is very different to the exposure to things that I've got. Because even if I never graduated from a computer science degree, I still know a lot of the things that happen under the hood of a computer. I know how programming languages works, I know what happens when things need to run the machine, and I know all the basics that you should know as a software engineer, just because I really went over in order to learn those things. But that's not the situation. My friend is very comfortable with the job that he's doing with React. But the problem and what I told him is, yeah, you may be very comfortable today, but if you don't put the effort now, in 3 to 5 years, you'll be completely outdated and you will have a really hard time to find job in the market. And remember, in 2024, the job market is tough. A lot of companies have been laying off excellent engineers, and those engineers are now flooding the market with experience. So developers that are not so talented or that they don't have enough experience are having a really hard time in order to get jobs. I mean, even experienced developers are having a hard time. The more you know, the more experience you have, the more things that you learn, the better the chances are on landing that next tech job. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, let's share you my tips for learning and staying up to date in the ever-evolving programming world. Let's get started. So the idea number one is micro-learning. And yes, micro-learning may not be exactly what you're thinking, but for me, micro-learning are having sessions that are dedicated to learning and nothing else. I'm not someone that does particularly well when multitasking. I have some friends that will be reading while they are listening to music, or they will be listening to an audiobook or to a tutorial while they are also doing something in the kitchen. I cannot do that. So what I like to do for myself is I like to reserve the time. And when I say I'm gonna be learning something new, that's all I do. And I close all the open programs that I have. I put do not disturb on my phone, and then I just focus on learning something new. I just keep my browsing for the research or an ebook if that's what I'm doing, and also my code editor, because when I'm learning, I normally learning about programming and I like to get hands-on immediately. And this is something that I highly recommend if you want to be learning something new. Focus your efforts in learning that activity, mute all notifications. That means no emails, that means no Slack, that means no messaging on the phone. Just focus between you and the things that you're trying to learn, and then the results will be optimal. And this is not just something that I say, this is something that has been proven by science. I'm going to be sharing some studies in the description below if that's what you're interested in. But generally speaking, if you focus on an activity, you'll perform better than if you multitask. One of the techniques that I've seen people doing when they want to learn focused is using the Pomodoro technique, where you basically set up a timer that you have on your desk, or it can be a software application. There are many free software applications using the Pomodoro technique, or they sell like specific clocks that you can put on your desk, and then you set a timer. And so, for example, you said, okay, I'm gonna be studying for 25 minutes, and then I'm gonna take a 5 minutes break. So every 25 minutes of studying, you take a 5 minutes break, and during those 5-minute breaks, you go to the restroom, you check your emails, you check your phone, whatever it is that you have to do, in order that in the next 25 minutes block, you are fully distracted. And that may work for most people. I normally don't like to set a timer because when my head goes into it, I just don't really need a timer. I will finish when I feel like I finished, and when I take a break, I'm gonna make sure that I take a break and then I come back to it. What I really don't do is grab my phone every 5 minutes. So that's something that I'm not tempted to do when I'm in this kind of mood. So I don't need this. But if you are someone that may benefit from using the Pomodoro technique, I mean, sure, it works. So whatever it works for you, just do it. But set the time and learn new things. So the next tip is what actually got me into developer relations and making YouTube videos and writing for my blog, which is when I'm learning something, I like to teach what I learn. And this is kind of like a way to solidify all the things that you have been reading, what you have been listening, what you have been practicing. If you understand it well enough, you will be able to teach it to someone else. In my case, I decided to use my own personal blog, and whenever I was learning something new, I would write a blog post about it. Because that way, if I'm writing the blog post and I get stuck and I don't know how to continue, that means that what I learned, I didn't learn it well enough, because if I cannot explain it to someone else, that means that I don't know the concept at all. So whenever that happens, I will go back to my learning focus mode, and then I will do that until I can focus and until I can nail that blog post. And that worked really well for me when I was learning Python, when I was learning JavaScript concepts or frameworks. Now I'm gonna be learning Rust, and I'm gonna do exactly like that. I'm gonna be sharing either here on YouTube or through my blog. I'm gonna sharing everything that I'm learning, just so that I can make sure that I solidify everything that I have been learning, and that I put everything that I have been learning into practice, and that I can explain to someone else the things that I learned. Because if I do that, chances are I learn it very well. And so, yeah, this is something that has had tremendous value for me, not only on my learning curves, but also because at the end of the day, I will also have blog posts and I will have YouTube videos and things that I can share with the community. And if you remember our last video on 9 passive ways to earn money, we discussed that some of the ideas are creating content. And what better way to create content while you're learning? I mean, you basically do the two things at the same time. So yeah, I highly recommend that whatever is that you learn, then you try to explain it to someone else. And if you think that you are not good with words, or you don't want to make a YouTube channel or anything like that, I mean, you don't have to, but you can summarize everything that you learn, write everything in your own words, and you don't need to publish it anywhere if you don't want to. You can use a Notion database where you can have like your own notes, or Obsidian, or whatever it is, Apple Notes, whatever it is that you do for notes. Just take notes of everything that you learn. Solidify that knowledge. If you don't want to, don't publish it. If you do, perfect. You can help speed up someone else's learning curve. So yeah, teach what you learn. That's my second tip. Tip number 3 is that you block your calendar to reserve times throughout the day or the week to learn. And this goes deeply connected with number one, when you need to set up focus times to learn. Well, now what we are doing is we are reserving those times throughout the day and the week where we are going to be doing those focus sessions. As busy engineers, I mean, everybody's busy. We all have busy lives, but especially software engineers, we always have so much to do from work. Sometimes we need to work extra hours, night shifts, we need to be on call, or so many things could be happening. Oh my God, depending on the company you are, you may have so many meetings throughout the day that if you don't do this, chances are you will not be setting aside any time because you'll never have time to learn new things. So block your time, pick up whatever you want you prefer to learn before you go to work, during work hours, after work, at night. I personally like, I'm a night owl, so I personally like to set some time at night. So I have a calendar block after my kids go to bed to learn new things. I don't do that every day now. In the past, I did it way more often. So now I have it 3 days a week. I have specific times where I like to learn new things. And I also have very specific methods on what I like to learn, which I'm gonna share next. Now, blocking your time isn't exactly a new idea. It's something that I read from a book. The book is called Deep Work by Cal Newport. I'm gonna share the link here in the description. So it's an idea that has been proven. If you reserve the time, you're basically pre-assigning a commitment to be learning new things. And so if it is on your calendar, it is something that you should be doing. And that is the key part. If you set the block in your calendar and then you just decide to ignore the calendar notification and not do it at all, that means that you're not committed to learning. So if you're gonna be committed to learning, set your time aside, be focused during that session, and then you're gonna be an awesome software engineer. All right, now for the fourth tip, my recommendation is don't try to read and learn everything from everywhere. Find a few sources that resonate with you, that do well with you, and just focus on learn from those sources. So I personally like reading more than seeing YouTube or using audiobooks. And so because I like reading, I like to subscribe to blog newsletters, or I like to subscribe to RSS feeds. Sometimes I even visit some blog pages. But most of the things that I consume are either books or things that I read from blogs. In order to do that, I use an app called Reader. It's an application from a company called Readwise, and I have been using Readwise for many years. I think it's a paid app. I don't know. I use the subscription for Readwise, and that comes also with Reader. And Reader is just an RSS aggregator, but it also gives you an email address that you can use to subscribe to newsletters. So everything comes into one feed, and that is the only source of consumption that I use. I find something on the internet that I like and I want to read. I don't read it right away unless it's very short. I will normally save it for later into my Reader application, or it can be any read it later application, but I basically save it for read it later. And then when I'm on these focus sessions, I will go through the list of the things that I want to read, and I tackle only those things that have been already curated. When I want to start like reading Rust, I Google Rust tutorial 101 or whatever that may be, and then I try to land on something that I like or may not like. No, I already curated the sources from where I want to learn Rust, and I will follow those sources. And only when I'm looking for specific things, I may go to Google. But other than that, I will be reading everything through this application and through this curated list. You may be wondering, like, why will I do that? Why will I limit my options when there's so many different things that I could use in the internet? And the reason is I get overwhelmed very easily. If I go to YouTube and I search for Rust and I start watching like one tutorial, and then I watch another tutorial, and then I don't like the way it explains, so I look for another one, and then midway they got me bored or whatever that is. It is very easy for me when there's too many options to get distracted by the options and be more picky about, like, should I watch this one, should I watch that one, maybe I should watch both. I don't really need both, so I get very unfocused and I get very distracted when I have too many options. So I prefer to reduce my options to quality options and just consume from there. It takes a little bit of time at the beginning to set up those sources, but once you have those, I mean, it really helps a lot, because I just go into my read it later application like once a day. I read like my news, I read all the text things that I want to know that are happening, and then whenever I have focus time, I will go and learn all the new things of the articles that I already saved. So yeah, it does help me a lot. Another reason is that it helps me not get distracted with doing something else. Like if I jump into a tutorial on YouTube and I'm watching a tutorial, and then in the recommendations from YouTube there's another video that is completely unrelated to programming, I may click on that. and then I go into the rabbit hole of watching one video and then another and then another, and then my focus session time ended and I didn't learn anything at all because I was just watching Dragon Ball Z or Dragon Ball Super or whatever that may be, right? So having this curated source of things that I want to learn helps me stay focused, and that is the key of things. It helps me with focus and it helps me with maintaining the quality of the information that I consume. I love that. I love that tip. So if you have a Read Later app, use it. If not, set one up. They are free. There are a ton of free options, and start saving for later what you want to read and use those focus sessions to consume that content. That helped me a lot, and I hope it helps you too. For the last tip is that you put to practice what you learn in tutorials or articles. And this is extremely important to avoid tutorial hell. Tutorial hell is when you go and read an article and you consume all that information and then you kind of like go about your life and then you completely forgot about it, and then you go to another tutorial and then another tutorial and you end up consuming all this information that you never put to practice, and it kind of like goes away from your head. There's only so many things that we can keep here, right? When you learn something new, explain it to someone else, like we discussed on a previous tip, but also put it into practice for yourself. If you're learning to write code in Rust, you cannot read a tutorial about it and say, hey, I know Rust. No, you need to get your hands dirty. You need to start coding applications, start with a simple application, get more complex, get more complex, get complex, more complex, and until you grasp not only the syntax of the programming language, but also the way of thinking that comes with a programming language. For example, when I work with JavaScript, I have a completely different mindset than when I work on Python, just because the programming languages are set up in different ways and require me to think differently. So whenever you see or you watch a tutorial, please put that to practice. Avoid tutorial hell and you'll do an excellent job being a software engineer. Alright, thanks for sticking around, nerds. What a journey it has been today. If you find these tips helpful, please make sure that you subscribe to this channel and that you like this video, or the other way around, never know. And just remember, own your own learning journey. Don't let your employer kill your chances of a bright software engineer career. You need to own that. If there's anything you need to take out of this video, is that you need to own your own learning. It is for your own good, not for your employers. Don't focus on what you need to learn to do the job right now, but focus on what you need to learn to be the next X software engineer. So yeah, don't forget to check the links in the description below. I'm also gonna be dropping a link to my previous video on the 9 passive ways to earn money, and see you next time. Bye, nerds.